Okay. How's everybody's Thursday? Great.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay, good. You guys getting through the week okay? Work going good? Life going good? Great. Okay.
Great.
So for today's event, start this off as usual. In case you're new here, I think we have some new people. What we do for these events is we kind of take turns. So every other week, we try to get somebody from the Salesforce world to come in and talk to us about a topic and give us their perspective on what it is that they're doing. So last week we had Megan. She came by. She's really well known in the industry, hasn't been in there that long, consultant, talked to us about Dreamforce stuff, which was great. And then this week, what we try to rotate with is also kind of taking some time to apply the principles that we've been talking about, principles that are in our course, and just give you guys more of like an open floor to ask questions about how to apply all this stuff. So that's what this week is going to be. Today, what we're doing is a live workshop, and that workshop is all going to be centered around referrals and why people most likely don't trust you at this time. So we're going to break down what that means, how you can get people to trust you, and how you can get more job referrals and set yourself up for the long haul so that you can get more options on the table when it comes to jobs, increasing pay, things like that. So we'll go from there. Does anybody have anything that what I want to start doing before I start these things this time is this kind of turns into a lecture mode, which I definitely don't mind. And we kind of have a Q&A at the end. But before I start this time, is there anything specific that somebody is hoping to get out of today's live workshop that I can make sure I get to? Nothing. Okay, cool. Well, if there is, feel free to put it in the chat or just come off mute and we can kind of go from there. Let me share my screen so we can get this started. And I got a little presentation so it looks nice and fancy for us. Okay. So for tonight's agenda, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through some of these steps. Okay, so there's really 5 steps to tonight's agenda. And those 5 steps are going to be all centered around really how you can kind of increase your confidence, increase your trust with people. So number 1, how we can point out problems that people are having. I just took a call with someone in our community last night, Alex, and we actually talked a lot about this. So this is really fitting. We're going to go through this because we spent a lot of our time in the one-on-one talking about the same thing. But we're going to talk about really how you can kind of focus your voice online and when you're talking to people to the right audience. What I've been noticing through my one-on-ones and DMs with you guys is that one kind of always seems to get us, is that we post content, we talk, but we're not really directing it to the right people. And what that does is it's not going to give you the results you want because the wrong people are listening. So it's going to be kind of number 1. Number 2, we're going to go through the importance of listing benefits and what kind of benefits we want to list and what we should be pointing out towards other people of solving the problem that we're claiming to be able to solve. Then we're going to get to why their solutions didn't work. So in most cases, companies, if they have a problem and they're a smart company, they've probably tried to solve this before. So when you come along and you're giving a pitch, well, the first question that's probably going to be in their mind is, why are you different? Why is your skill set different from the people we've already interviewed with? If it's a job, if it's a product, why does this work different than the other products we've tried? So we're going to kind of talk about that part too and how you can really adjust that. Then obviously one of the most important parts is the proof that you've done it before, what that looks like, how you can show proof. It's likely something you guys have tried to do already, but tightening that up a little bit. And then at the end, we'll obviously open it up for like any recap stuff you guys want to go over or any type of questions that came up along the way. All right, so let's get started here and we can kind of move forward. So the very first point that we are going to talk about is pointing out the problem, okay? So when it comes to pointing out the problem, there's really 3 things that I like to focus on. Let's pretend in this instance, for the sake of the conversation, that we're all on the same page. I think the easiest way to think about this as we go through it is if you kind of think of yourself as a door-to-door salesman. If you're selling solar panels or you're selling, whatever it is, direct TV, something like that. The reason for that is because a lot of these are a lot easier to think through and view it through that perspective as we talk about this, because that is like hardcore selling, right? Like you are at the door with somebody, you're having to sell something, some type of product, and you got to be really good at this kind of stuff. And if you look through that lens, then it's, I think, a little easier, at least it has been for me, to then take it and say, okay, so I got to take that same principle and apply it to how I would search for a job. Okay. So the very first thing is the problem itself. So we're a door-to-door salesman. We go to someone's door. We obviously knock it. It's a cold call. They don't know us. When they answer that door, the very first thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to sell yourself, or sell them, more importantly, that there's a problem that exists out there. If I'm looking for a job, same principle applies, right? Is this what I talked about last night with Alex in our one-on-one? Is if Alex is trying to find a job in the Salesforce world, his problem is that companies need a admin that is reliable. They need someone that can work with soft skills, easy to talk to, knows how to take care of their Salesforce instance, knows when to update Salesforce. The list goes on and on and on, right? Of all these things. And so really, Garen's talked a lot about this with me too, is like, okay, that's all great. There's tons of things we could point out, but what one should I focus on? And I think for you guys specifically, that's going to depend on your angle, how you want to go about doing this. So for Alex in our one-on-one last night, he had a really cool background where he's coming from being a realtor and a personal trainer. So I told him to lean into that and kind of use some of those experiences to put a different angle on how he's going to approach problems. Because in both of those fields, for him, tons of transferable skills of talking to people, having to sell people on things, work with stakeholders, meet deadlines, especially like personal training, right? Like if you're not seeing results, you're going to lose the client. So it's like, how do I keep them up to date? How do I keep them on the deadline? So for you, think of something in your past that you can kind of put your own spin on. And a lot of the times that's going to be your background, where you're coming from, the industry you're in. But more importantly, pick something. If for Alex, because he has those soft skills, that was similar to me. I felt like that's why I related to that, is I was coming from a call center. So I had a lot of the same soft skills. So my pitch going into this was a quick one that I realized that I was good at. Okay, well, when I get on these technical teams, a lot of the admins, they're supposed to be able to talk with stakeholders, but they can't because they're introverted. They haven't really had that soft skill experience. They didn't do a lot of the things I did that led up to me applying as an admin. So my angle going in was pointing out the problem to say, look, you need an admin on your team that you can talk to easily, that you can give feedback to, that you can give criticism to, that you can go send off to talk to the VP and know that the VP is going to be able to get along with me, that I'm going to be able to express our problems, that we're going to be able to move things along and stay on track. That was my personal angle. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's that or something else. Whatever you're good at, make that the problem. And going back to that door-to-door salesman, they're going to do the same thing, right? If they're selling solar, and this happens all the time because I'm in a neighborhood that's getting developed. So I get solar people all the time, and all these different companies come out and they all have a different angle. Well, we do this and we have lifetime guarantee on our solar panels, or you don't pay until the first 15 months are through on your contract, or you don't do this. They pick something to make them different, and they sell me as to why that is going to make my life better, is because they're solving that problem. Well, your life's going to be better if you buy our solar, because you don't have to pay for 15 months. Your life is going to be better because if a solar panel breaks, it's a lifetime guarantee. Your life is going to be better because blank. So you're doing that same thing. Mine was the whole soft skill thing, okay? Your life is going to be better because I can talk to people really easily, and this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you want someone like that? That's going to make life easier for you. So that's the first thing. You got to sell them on what it is, because if you go in and you start talking broadly, well, I'm good at compliance, or oh, I'm good at this, or I'm good at that. Okay, well, now you're a jack of all trades, and there's not really a specific reason to use you, if you kind of do a little bit of everything. Every company in the world does the same thing with their own products. They pick something that they're good at, and that's the pitch. That's why you buy the product, whatever it is that you choose to buy there. So rule number one, start off with that. What that's going to do is kind of bring you over here to number two, okay? Number two, let me see if I can get my chat up real quick over on my other screen. Okay, thanks. Yeah, Garen, go ahead.
So I wanted to kind of throw this your way because it's something being a salesperson, I follow a lot of sales, like people with advice and stuff like that. And I think a cool or a different angle would be, and maybe this is better for later on, maybe not your first like admin position or whatnot, but I'd be curious to see what you think. A lot of times what they say is don't necessarily just talk about like your strengths. Like each solar person says, well, we do this, we do that, but even highlighting a problem and saying, I'm trying to think of an example, like, how do you handle this problem that you're, dealing with? And they're going, oh, wow, I don't. And as a salesperson, you're trying to highlight something that, like, they're not necessarily aware of, so that it makes you think like, oh, look, I'm already adding value because here's a, hiring manager that isn't aware of this problem that obviously you have a solution to. And they're like, oh, well, I don't know. So tell me about, what's your solution to that? And that kind of brings into the promotion, but it's kind of a different spin on like the problem aspect.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's definitely a great one people should work up to for sure. It's almost taking it, and I think what Garen's trying to translate here in my mind is when you're in that interview process or you're talking with the company, you're actually trying to pose the problem as a question, as if like that exists already, because that's the track you want them to go down. So if I get into an interview, I want to say like, well, tell me this, how hard is it for your current staff to go and talk with like a VP? Is that something you're comfortable with them doing? Right. Obviously it'd be more refined than that, but they would say, if I know that the people on the team don't have those soft skills, then I'm expecting them to say like, well, actually, no, we can't. We have like language barriers, or, we're outsourcing and it's difficult with time zones or whatever it is. Okay, well, cool. Well, this makes it a no-brainer because that's the exact thing that I'm here to do. I'm going to solve that for you. So that's a really good call out. As you do that, kind of off of Garen's point there, the promotion side of it, number two here, it's automatically going to make you look credible by doing this. A lot of people, when you first start, you get this imposter syndrome where you don't think you're good enough. And really making yourself an quote unquote expert or credible is actually just about the way you frame yourself. If you go in and you asked that kind of question, like Garen just said, you automatically feel like you're one step ahead of them. They feel that way. They're like, oh man, this guy asked a question that is actually a really good question that we haven't really thought through, or maybe we have thought through that and he's already telling us how we can solve it. That's awesome. So as you do those things, you prep that way, it automatically highlights your own skills, right? And that's what we want them to do. We want them to go down this track so that they can see, we can show them exactly what we want to show them, and they still feel like they're in control. But really, the way we're posing questions, the way we're framing things, we're setting it up to be like, yeah, you're going to go right down this road, and this road is everything I'm perfect at. I'm really good at everything on here. I'm not going to talk about the technical side because I got one certification. I'm going to keep you on this track that is all about soft skills because that's where I thrive. I don't really want us to get over here because I don't want to look weak. I want to look like I'm this really credible source. And as you do that, right, the very last thing is if you do this through social media posts, it's really about the hook. The very first thing that you want to do. As I've studied more and more about copywriting and trying to get better at this in life is I don't know if it was a blog or whatever, but they had this breakdown and it was great. And it just said like, what is the purpose of your email? And a lot of people would kind of jump to being like, oh, well, it's the body of the email. It's the bulk of my message and what I'm going to say and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, more important than that, the very first thing that you should spend 90% of your time on is actually the email subject line. Why? Because if they don't even find interest in that, they won't click in to read the message. So rule number one is write a good email subject line. What's rule number two? Write a good first line. What's rule number three? Write a good second line, then a third line, then a fourth line. And that's what it's all about. So as you pitch, whether it's an interview or a social media post, that's the way you should think about it. The body of your message, yeah, it's important, but what's more important is getting the attention first. So you really want to focus a lot of the time on your social media posts or in the interview that you're about to join is, what am I going to say first? What is the first thing that I can do to like grab that attention right off the bat and keep it, right? So that's kind of the very first part here, okay? Let's move on to the second. Second one is going to be our benefits, okay? As we go through benefits, what we want to do is, some of these are kind of obvious, but if it's a small problem you're trying to solve, as obvious as that sounds, it's not in the moment because you get caught up. You think it's a problem, or maybe you struggled to come up with things that would be a problem. So you kind of go for the very first problem you can think of, right? I've definitely had my fair share of this as I've tried to come up with like business ideas and business approaches. It's like, oh yeah, this is really good. But the reality is it was actually just the first problem I thought of, and I didn't really think it through. And then you go to sell a product on that, or you try to help somebody with that. And you're like, actually, nobody cares about this at all. Like, this isn't even a problem that's worth solving. They don't care to spend money on this kind of thing. So the smaller the problem, the smaller the priority. And flipping this back to something relatable for all of us, we all can do this outside of work. If you have a significant other, you have parents, you have a friend, whoever it is in life, if you've ever tried to convince anybody of anything, you've done this. You know exactly how they work. You know exactly what kind of strings to pull on that person and how to get them to be bought in on the situation, right? I remember growing up, I had a little sister, and I always knew the right things to say to my mom to get my little sister in trouble, right? It was just like, I knew exactly what it was that I could say. I could easily turn my tone of voice, make the problem seem more dramatic, say something about her, and then immediately it was just like kind of humorous towards the end that my mom every time would fall for it and just be like ticked off right automatically at my little sister. So it's the same idea, right? It's like, I know exactly how to do that to make this seem like a big priority. Otherwise, my mom's not going to care. She's not going to react. She's not going to care about whatever I'm trying to do. Same thing with your job, right? Is when you're going into that interview, same idea, what we talked about, pointing out that problem, make sure it's a problem worth solving. Yeah, I was a great older brother to her. So just make sure it's a good problem solving. And really how you can identify that, right, are these ones down here. Well, what does the company care about itself? And again, this is what Alex and I talked about in our one-on-one is, okay, I'm going to create posts. I'm going to point out problems. I'm going to prep for my interviews and do this kind of stuff. The more important part is like, how do we make this relatable to the company so that they actually care what I have to say? Well, they care about their reputation. Sorry, let me go back. They care about their reputation. They care about efficiency, getting faster at things. So they spend less time, less money. And then bottom line. And almost all three of those, even though they're all slightly different, they almost always come back to the money. So if you're in doubt, try to look for something that's going to give them more money, even a better reputation, right? The better reputation you have, the more money you're going to make. The faster you are at things, the more money you're going to make. You spend less money. So you're really trying to look for those three things. And then, yeah, the perfect tree over here, right, is like, if you can solve one, it's a problem worth listening to. If you can tie it to all three, it's kind of a no-brainer. And at that point, they're looking to solve that problem. And the question just becomes, are you the person that's going to solve it for me, right? And in most cases, if you're applying for a job, if you're not getting recruited, but you're applying for a job, they're already waving a flag to tell you that there's a problem because they're already seeking it out. So they're looking for it. They're going to solve this problem. It's now just a matter of who's going to be there to solve it for them. So the more you can focus your words and your interview and your posts back to those things to speak their type of language, the easier it's going to be for them to pair you to say, oh, okay, Vera is great at this. That's the exact problem we have. Why wouldn't we hire Vera to do this job, right? Why wouldn't we hire Garen to do this job? And then this is kind of like a little example, right? This is an older post, but just kind of an idea, right? It's like, if I'm trying to get people to post on LinkedIn, okay, well, this is like a kind of a double whammy where I have actual benefits, but I'm also like aesthetically trying to make this look like it's a lot better to post stuff versus not post stuff, right? So it's kind of like a no-brainer type of idea. And you want to take that same idea when you do your own posts. Is like, okay, here's all the benefits of why me solving this problem would be a good idea. Here's the risks that you're going to run. And so if I was in an interview, it's the same idea. The risk you run is you hire me. Well, you're going to hire someone anyway. So like, I'm not taking more money. I'm not taking more risk from you. I'm not doing anything that you're not already going to do. But the benefits of hiring me are these 20 different things that somebody else I know can't supply. So really, there is no risk. You hire me and we get all these benefits, or you don't hire me and you get less benefits. Which one would you rather do? Cool. Next slide is going to be about why their solutions didn't work. Okay, so going back to kind of that first example of the door salesman, right? If they have got me sold on some solar at this point, they've told me benefits, they've told me the problem, I'm convinced some way about it. At this point, I'm going to start comparing, and I probably do that sooner in my own brain, but at the same time, you eventually got to kind of get to that point with them. So you first got to tell them this problem, tell them your benefits, but then you got to let them know you understand that there's competition. You understand that they've probably tried other things and it just hasn't worked yet, because this is really going to kind of lead into helping you be relatable. What I always have liked to compare this to in the past is like underdog stories. Okay. So when we watch movies, if you go look at like some of the most successful movies in history, a lot of them come out to be these stories of an underdog. We all love the underdog in sports, especially. You see it all the time. You're always rooting for the underdog to win. You want the person that's always been on top to lose. And why do we want that? Because it's really relatable to a lot of us in life is why. We're always constantly trying to prove ourselves and rank up the ladder. And so when we see somebody else doing that, it doesn't matter if it's a movie or if it's a sport, we also relate back to that. Like, oh, this would be so cool because I can relate to that, right? I got that job when I wasn't qualified. I got that whatever when I wasn't qualified for it. So you want to push back on them and close that gap, that you're not up in the clouds and they're down here. You want to be like, yeah, no, we're in the same trench. I've been doing the same thing. That's why I'm approaching you. If you think about even this community, right, it's a similar thing I'm trying to do, which is, how do I sell this story? Well, typically if people reach out to me, I tell them my story, which is, look, I was from a different industry too. I wasn't getting paid well too. I was wanting to work remote too. And, like getting to know Garen really well, like he and I have talked a lot about that. And a lot of the things that he has wanted through this community and getting a job in the Salesforce industry, the same things I wanted 5 years ago. So my game plan with that is to do the same thing. It's to relate and say, yeah, I was just there. I'm just a couple of years ahead of you, but I was just there. I know exactly how to do it. I know exactly what it was like. And I feel you. This is exactly what I would want too. So this is why I've come up with this solution. I created this community. I created this course to help you because I felt that way. I didn't feel like there was resources. I felt like it was hard to learn. I didn't get the time of day from people in the Salesforce industry to sit down with me like in this format and talk to me about stuff like that. I didn't have access to that. So that's why I did it, right? So you want to do that same thing for them in your interview. And if it's the soft skill thing again, it's telling them that kind of stuff. Hey, like I've worked at jobs. I've been with IT before. I've worked with IT and, I'll put it bluntly. It's always been hard to work with them. Why? Because it's not that they're bad people, but they struggle to communicate what they're trying to get done for me. And so this is why when I'm applying for your job, I think this is going to be a huge benefit because I've also suffered through that. It's not a fun experience. It causes a lot of delay. It hurts our relationships with our stakeholders. It hurts our relationship as a business. So I personally take a lot of pride in making sure that our communication is key. And that's why I know that this solution is going to work. I know I'm a good candidate for this because I've seen the reverse and it's crappy. So I'm going to solve that for you. So you can do that through using, similar language, which is going to be like technical jargon, whatever that might be. If they're in, like, all of you guys are going to know your own jargon in your own industries. Garen, I know, has his own, working in the industry he's in right now with sales. Like, he's going to have different jargon that he would use for that versus Salesforce, right? If I'm a teacher, I'm going to use different jargon than somebody that works as a mechanic. So the idea is to relate. So you want to use the same type of language that they use so that they understand you also understand how to solve those problems. Same with your details and describing, okay? Explain why it's still a problem for them. Explain why those solutions didn't work. Explain why those candidates didn't work out. And then break down some of the poor tools that they've used, right? So you can say things like that. I just kind of said it in my rough draft there, which is like the whole IT thing. Like, hey, yeah, I've been through this. I've suffered through it. I've used those tools. We've tried these things to improve it. It didn't really help. And that's why it's still an issue. And you need someone like me to be able to fix this problem for you. Cool. All right. Kind of getting to the last of it here. And this one is going to be some of our proof. Okay. So after we've done all that, really we want to show proof we've done it. And we've all heard this one. I think we talked about it like every event we get into, somehow the portfolio thing comes up, but it's that important, right? And it's the same idea of the company situation. These guys come to my house, they sell solar. If they've literally never sold solar, why the heck would I want to buy it from them? Same thing we talked about with Chris when he came on, the recruiter. When you look at Amazon, Amazon has it perfect when you go to buy a product. They have the reviews, they have how many stars there are, they have how many people purchase, testimonials, they have the whole thing. They even have like Amazon bestseller, featured product, whatever it is. And all that adds to this dopamine effect that it's like, oh, well, why would I be the crazy one to not trust this? Everybody else seems to, right? So it's fine because you are going to be a newbie. And if this is your first job, that's fine. What we've talked about in the past, just to repeat ourselves, is if you don't have hands-on Salesforce experience, it's trying to look at what you do know how to do and using those experiences to relate it, right? So again, my angle going in was I'd worked at a call center. So when it comes to de-escalating things, when it comes to talking to stakeholders, when it comes to talking to the VPs, I was already doing that. Sure, it's not about Salesforce, but it was about how we could better our business, which is at the end of the day what I'm trying to do as an admin anyway. So it's more or less the same. I'm not going to maybe know all the technical stuff right this second, but I know how to do this. Like, I know the framework that it requires for me to be able to do that kind of thing. So that's the way you could kind of relate this and what you should be looking at. Now, your portfolio can be made up of a lot of different things. Your portfolio can be set up as literally like tutorials. It could be you interviewing other people. It could be you, in my early days, I did like a podcast really early on, and it was just literally me taking a topic and breaking it down of how I was solving it. You can do whatever it is that you want. The point is your portfolio should be something to show to people when they ask in that interview, or preferably before the interview. They can go and look at it and say, okay, yep, Garen is great at this, or Matt is great at this thing that he proclaims to be great at. Why? Well, I went and read this blog, or I went and looked at this portfolio and he's got a video on it, or he's got a blog on it, or he's got a podcast on it, or he talked to other people and they broke down the problem. So I can see he's learning how to do it. It doesn't matter how you do it. It just matters that you have it there available to be able to share with other people, so that one, it's really efficient, that you're not repeating yourself over and over and over again throughout all these interviews, but two, so that people can proactively go and look at it without you having to be there. Yeah, Very, go ahead.
I was gonna ask if you consider like LinkedIn posts as part of this kind of proof, because I know you like subscribe to like posting as much as possible, but do you actually consider that part of it, or do you consider it separate?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think they both have different places. I think different tools will be used differently, right? So you have your LinkedIn, you have Twitter and Instagram, whatever social media you want to go with. Typically, almost all of those are going to be short form content. There are posts that I post that are like longer, but think about in terms of searchability. It's a lot harder for somebody to go back even just like a week or two if I'm posting every day and find something by a keyword. Like most likely they're not going to find it on LinkedIn or Twitter. Versus if I have a newsletter, and that's why I do have a newsletter. A newsletter is able to be searched a lot easier. I can set the topic, I can set the title a lot easier, right? And it's there forever. Same with like your portfolio, same idea. It allows you the space because there's no limitation on it. And it's your own personal thing to be as long as you want or as short as you want. Go into the details you'd like to go into or not. Add video or not, add podcasts or not, right? So you have more functionality. So I definitely consider it because it's the thing generating the noise for you and doing a lot of the marketing. And that still counts because people do go to your LinkedIn profile and that does have an impact for sure. But if I want them to know specifically that I know personally how to walk through a flow, well, I guess I could go post a YouTube video on LinkedIn, but they're not going to be able to find that easily. And most likely they're not going to put that kind of effort forth. But if they went to a portfolio and I have, and they're scrolling and there's a few blog posts and one of them's a literal walkthrough of a flow. Well, okay, now if they want to, they can go and look at it and see how I described how to do that, right? So I think it's just more, use the right tool for the right situation, I'd say. Okay, cool. So this kind of leaves us with about 10 minutes or so, since we've been trying to shoot for 45 minutes or so on these live workshops. For any kind of questions you guys might have, I know you guys asked a lot of good ones along the way there, but anything that we talked about or anything with the last 10 minutes you guys would like to fill up, I'm happy to help out with. Yeah, Vera.
So I was thinking about reaching out to people in the context of LinkedIn, right? Like just cold reaching out to people. Like, how do you, so you know how when you're connecting with people, it gives you a limited number of characters to say certain things? Like, how do you package that well enough that people are interested in connecting with you, because you don't, like, I know there are in-mails, but not everybody has premium, so you need to connect with people to talk to them. So how have you approached that before?
Yeah, it's a good question. Garen, I know you just asked me this question not too long ago with Stacy in our DMs. Do you want to kind of explain, I guess, what's been working well for the both of you after we talked about that? And then I'll give maybe a different angle too.
I know what Stacy's been doing. She actually told me.
Oh,
But
cool.
I'm curious what you,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Garen, have you been doing anything different from Stacy?
Not necessarily. I need to do a better job. I like the angle that she's taking. I haven't taken that approach, but I should. Because basically her approach is trying to connect, like reaching out more with and doing the active connecting. I think for me, where I've missed probably the mark on the LinkedIn is I've just been so focused on actually creating content that I haven't really, like, that's literally all the
Same
time
here.
that I have for doing that. So it's like, it's hard for me to like, okay, now it's like a whole different approach that I gotta like, take time to do. But Stacy does a good job. But I think honestly is, for me, if I were to answer that, if that was directed at me, I would say, don't connect first if you haven't engaged first. Like a cold call is going to be way harder than a warm call. Like as soon as somebody gets like, oh yeah, this is, I know this guy, he's been commenting on my, thing a couple of times. So if there is somebody that you find, I would say follow them first and then engage with them a little bit so that it become, it can be a warm lead. Cause that's one of my text-based things is like, hey, thanks for engaging in my post. Love to connect, and they're like, oh, so then it's somewhat, and that's more, me doing it. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. My early days when I started this, I think you can do a number of things. And again, if we want to make the most out of that time that you're going to put into it anyway, that's the way I started thinking about it when I was early into this. And my goal at the time was to like grow a presence on LinkedIn. So I think I originally started off with something that Garen had mentioned, right? I actually went and targeted people because I was a nobody and I wasn't really posting. So I went to like David Liu, and at the time he doesn't post much anymore on LinkedIn, but at the time he was posting pretty regularly. And I would go and I'd click on a post I liked and I would click on who liked it. And there's like 200 likes. I would start going down that list. I literally hit command click, and open up like 100 tabs of
Then you
all
got
those
banned.
people. Yeah. This is before they really had like a lot of like crackdown on some of that crap. But I would open up like 100 tabs and I would start going through those tabs. And my pitch at the time would be something similar. It'd be like, hey, I just saw that you comment quite frequently on David Liu's content. I'm new to the Salesforce industry. I'd love to see your content on my feed too. And that kind of like either did two things. One, if they did post content, I usually didn't take the time to look. If they posted content, then okay, cool. That's sweet. I'm happy with that. He can see my stuff on his feed. I'll connect. Two is if they didn't, it also opened the door for me to have a conversation, because then they'd come back and say, well, I don't really post content. And then it's like, okay, well, cool. Now I can talk to this person because they still responded. And I say, oh, well, no worries. And then you can say whatever you want. I still saw that your X title, like you're a Salesforce architect, still think it would be cool to connect with you, trying to get into the industry, whatever. Okay, cool. And then they'd connect. So I think that's one way that I started doing just in general to get connections. The second way was once I started posting things, and a lot of you in this group have that now. If it's somebody that you think can help you in some way, you could also approach it that same type of strategy, but like put something else in there. So my second approach was, hey, I saw you liked David's YouTube video. I wanted to connect and also share my YouTube channel because I post similar stuff to David. And then this is like the real pro move. I would not put my YouTube link in there. I would put the YouTube link that pushed them to a page that said subscribe. So when they clicked that link, the subscribe to my YouTube channel popped up, and I started driving a lot more subscribers to my YouTube channel right off the bat.
That's kind of devious.
Yeah. And so it worked good though. Like I never really had any complaints and people went forward with it. So that was always cool. And I kind of did that same thing with other products that I had, right? Like when I first started trying different products to sell and trying to help people out, or wherever it was that I wanted to push them. If it's, my newsletter, I kind of do the same thing. So I would try a few different approaches like that. But if you can either do, hey, I saw you liked my stuff. If you're posting stuff, cool, do that. But if you're not posting stuff, which I definitely wasn't when I first started, you can go and target other people who are. So by all means, you could go to mine. And if you want to connect with people that are connected to me or liking my stuff, do the same thing. Go to my comments, go to my likes, go to those people because they obviously like what I'm talking about. That's why they liked it. And then you connect with them. Hey, cool. I saw you like Jordan's stuff. I'm in his community. Thought we'd connect, get to know you a little bit better. It looks like you're trying to do X, Y, Z. As long as you can make some kind of, this is just, I want to connect with you, and you have some kind of other reason why you found them, people tend to be a lot more receptive to that. Is that helpful? Okay, perfect. Okay, we have about still 5 minutes. Any other questions that you guys would like answered before we end today?
I was waiting for somebody else to ask, but I guess no one's talking. So, do you want to go ahead, Garen? Do you have anything? Okay.
No, go ahead.
How do you vary your approach depending on the type of role of the person you're approaching? So, we have other admins, marketing people, even executives. Like, how do you vary up how you approach the problem? Like, do you do something like, focus on money for the executives and then focus on ease for admins or things like that?
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we kind of rushed over that, but yes, your audience. So depending on who your audience is, they're going to want to hear something different, right? If I came in here and I talked to you guys about, I don't know, just how we use cool tools at the company I work for. And that's why it's awesome to be an admin. I'd be like, oh yeah, we use Gear Set and we have Zoom info and outreach, and it just makes the job easy. For people trying to get into the industry, for this community specifically, this is going to be a dumb approach because you don't care about the tools at this point. Like, that's not what you're interested in. What you're interested in is probably something like, well, I want more freedom. I want more time back. I want a remote job. I want to increase my pay. I want better work-life balance. Anything along those lines is more what somebody in this community is more than likely interested in and why they joined, right? So I'm going to shift the way I talk about Salesforce to highlight those specific things. If I'm in an interview instance, yeah, typically your first one is a recruiter. Your recruiter does not care about Salesforce. They do not care really about much, to be completely honest. They've been told to go and basically be a gatekeeper and make sure that you are a decent human being. So they just want to make sure that you can talk. They want to make sure that they're going to ask you some checkbox questions. They will have no idea. So if you waste time going into depth on things, they're not really going to care. They're really just saying, hey, somebody told me to go hire this kind of person. I have no idea what you really do. This is what they said that you should be able to do. And I'm also paying attention more to how you treat me, how you talk to me. If it's easy to talk to you, do you make me feel uncomfortable? Are you going to be easy to talk with my stakeholders? If that's a yes, I'm moving you on. So on your very first one, you typically don't need to worry too much about, oh, I got to be really on when it comes to Salesforce. It's just more of, I need to be really on when it comes to creating a conversation. I need to be friendly. I need to be happy. Your second one is you finally get in, then you go and talk to somebody that's probably going to be Salesforce facing. It's either going to be your future boss or it's going to be an admin. In most of my cases, it's like your future boss. So it's a manager position. So again, they're going to be a little more technical with you for sure, because they're going to be watching out for you. They want to make sure you can do the job. But depending on how long that manager has been in that role and when they got into that role and what that title is, for example, in a lot of startups I've been at, they're usually like a revenue operations manager, or they're a marketing manager, or they're an operations manager. So yes, they have some Salesforce knowledge because they manage that, but they're also managing marketing, and they're managing the business applications team, and they're managing whatever else, right? So they're managing 3 or 4 different teams. And so they have a little bit of knowledge over everything. So if they're that kind of person, it's still kind of the same idea. They want to maybe check some boxes. But again, they want to see, okay, what's it going to be like if I hire Jordan? Is it going to be hard to work with him? How does he take feedback? How would he pose questions to me? Is he willing to speak up about stuff, right? They want to check those things. And then typically your third, if you do 3 or 4, then I've gotten more into, okay, that went well. I'm going to have you speak with my admin. And if they have you do that, that's typically because they want to make sure you know how to do the technical. At that point, if you meet with a specific person on the team, when you go into that, do all you can to brain dump into either your dev org or portfolio of all the technical stuff you've done. Also start researching all those technical questions we post last time, right? Because you're going to want to go through a lot of that stuff to make sure you're on for the technical piece of it, because they're going to ask you specifics. They're going to ask you, okay, when we do this, use cases, when we do this, how would you use data loader to do this? And you're going to have to like solve that kind of stuff. Sometimes even getting on calls and showing them on Zoom. Usually not the thing that you do as a junior admin or an admin, but it does happen sometimes. Later on in your career though, yeah, definitely you'll get into like more of those very technical ones where you showcase stuff and build things online for them. So that's like how you'd want to approach it. Each one's different. And then usually that's the end of it. Sometimes they'll have you do a wrap up with an executive. And again, that one's almost the same thing as a recruiter. They're not going to know anything really about Salesforce because they have a team to do that. They're just checking the same thing. They're just kind of giving you the final thumbs up. If they're an executive, chances are they have a lot more experience with that stuff, a lot more experience working with people. They've been around the block a time or two. So they're basically just saying, hey, we all feel good about it. What do you think? Let's just get this final sign off to get the warm and fuzzies. And it's the same thing. You just want to be good at that last one of talking about how to create conversation, being relatable, being friendly and personable. And then once you do that, then that's kind of the final sign off, right? Because they'll feel good about you. Awesome. Really good question. Okay, we just went a little bit minute over, but I'll ask one last time before we end here. Is there any other questions I can answer? Let me read this chat too to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, because I know Matt threw something in here. Is there any way that you found to make sure the recruiter is telling you the truth about the job, or better to find someone on LinkedIn that used to work there? Let's see. So with Matt's question, found a way to make sure the recruiter is telling the truth about the job. Maybe is there a little more context I can get on that one? What do you mean by telling the truth about the job?
So last gig I had was financial tech, and was told, super job, you work maybe 30, 40 hours a week. You got a virtual assistant screening all your calls. It basically lay down deals, leads coming out the wazoo, everything. Turned out that none of that, absolutely none of that was correct. No virtual assistants. You're pushing 60 hours per week minimum, getting paid for 40. Nobody, there was like maybe, 5% there that were pulling in 6 figures at tops. So none of that was correct. And yet he painted the rosiest picture, and it's been done to me more than once. And I keep on getting burned because it gets so amped and jazzed. And I was like, sweet, this is what I've always looked for. This is why I went to college. And it just blows up completely in my face.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, that can definitely happen. And again, the recruiter, I guess when you're looking at their job, although that's not right to do, their job is literally to go out and hire people and get you amped up about the company, right? If it's a well-known company, they kind of take a back burner to getting you hyped up. If it's a Google or something big, right? Because it's like, we all know you should be excited and you should feel privileged to work for us. But on startups, they want to kind of give you the pitch, and this is why we're awesome, and this is why we're going to be disruptive. And sometimes they go a little overboard with that, like you're mentioning and you've experienced, or they'll tell you stuff that's not necessarily going to be how it is. The only way I've really found to kind of combat that is trying to be tactical. Like once I know I get that interview with LinkedIn and approaching different people. So one thing I haven't wanted to do is I don't want to go and just bluntly ask somebody on the admin team, hey, do you like your job, right? Like, I don't want to just say it bluntly like that because I don't want to turn anybody off, especially if I'm going to have to work with them or make it look like I'm kind of trying to reach for info. But if I were to try to tactfully go about that, I would still reach out to somebody on the admin team and I could say something more along the lines of, hey, I just got an interview. I'm super stoked to work there, or at least have the opportunity to like fill it out and see if I'm a good fit. I see you guys are doing XYZ. That looks awesome. I'd love to be a part of it. I've heard good things. How have you liked working there so far? And that way you're taking the approach of like benefit of the doubt. In benefit of the doubt, I think this company is going to be awesome and I really want to work here. That's my position for reaching out to you, because I want to confirm that this is also as awesome as I think it is. And most of the time when I've done that, people are more willing to do kind of the same thing back. Don't expect them to just bluntly tell you, but I've had good experiences with people also tactfully, not trying to trash their job, but giving me some more realistic expectations and saying, yeah, it has been awesome. I've really enjoyed, whatever, the paternity leave, like male and female or whatever, we all get the same amount and it's awesome. Or I've really enjoyed the PTO, it's unlimited. And they'll go into that. And then they'll slightly tell you some of the things maybe they don't really overly love. And they'll say, the only thing that's been difficult, it is a startup. So there are some times that I have to work a weekend, or I've had to work some extra hours to get something across the line that I don't love, but these things make up for it. That's usually been my experience if it's a good employee that wants to be there, right? As they're not going to trash on it, but they will hint at some things. That's really only been the way I've personally experienced. There might be some other approaches there, Matt, but for me personally, that's what I've tried that's worked pretty decently for myself. Does that help?
Yeah, no, did. In the last situation, I didn't know to look into the LinkedIn prior, and there was nobody else to chat with. So you were kind of on your own little island. But no. Sure. I more of a broad scope this time around to vet them out, if you will.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely try that. Obviously, there's the other ones that are kind of like the common sense there, like, okay, if I have a connection, I'm definitely going to reach out to them. You could also even look for another cool way that somebody might be more willing to kind of trash on the company or give you the nitty gritty, is you could also look at people who used to work there. They no
Right.
longer work there. So it's a
Right.
previous job.
Exactly.
And then reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm looking to get there. It looks like you just moved a couple months ago. Is there a specific reason that you wanted to move on? And then they could be like, oh, well, I just got a better opportunity. Or no, I didn't love it for these reasons, because
And
now
then
they have. Go
By
ahead.
the same token, don't go ahead and necessarily look at Yelp or anything else like that from people who've only been there a short time with those 1 stars or whatever, because they're going to dog on it for whatever reason, no matter what, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have some of those tools. I've been seeing one pop up on like my TikTok feed, which is called Fishbowl, I guess. I
Yeah,
haven't used it.
I have that.
So Fishbowl, Glassdoor, you could definitely look at those. And speaking from my own experience, I haven't done this for every company, but companies I was still working for, and then I would go and read reviews. It would typically be like situations where it wasn't an amazing employee, and then they'd have
Sure,
this really
exactly.
nasty review. And I'm like, okay, but at the same time, like you didn't ever pull your weight. So like, I can't blame the company for letting you go or whatever.
Exactly.
You know?
But if you're coming in from a third person on that one, looking at that,
Yeah.
you have no idea what happened.
Oh, for
beforehand.
sure. Yeah. Cause you read it and you're like, oh man, this place looks horrible. Right. I
Yeah.
have no context to why this person would be saying this. So yeah, if you can get connected somehow with a real human, always definitely the way I would choose to go.
Cool. Gracias.
Yeah. You're welcome. Awesome. Okay. Well, we went a little over on time, so we'll wrap it up here. Do appreciate you guys being on. I still need to send out that survey, but if you guys like these things, this type of format that we've been trying out, we've only done it a couple times now. Just feel free to let me know, shoot me a DM or something like that afterwards. And then that way I know yay or nay that we should keep doing these. Totally open to changing this to however we want to. The main purpose for me when I get on these events with you guys is just to try to provide more value, try to like help you answer more questions. So I don't really care how we want to do that. This is just an experimental way to try to do it. So if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, still let me know and we can change it up. Sounds like, I think so far from the people on these calls, we've enjoyed them. So that's good. Okay, cool. Looks like all of you guys enjoyed it so far. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep it up then. We'll keep finding topics like this to go through. And we'll plan on seeing you guys next week. I think we have another event lined up. So we'll plan on seeing you then. And if anything comes up in the meantime, always open in DM. So feel free to shoot me one there if you have questions I can answer during the week. Other than that, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye, Jordan.
We'll see ya.